Battery flight test of the DJI Mini 3 Pro and the DJI Air 2S. All right, I'm Brett Garamella, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to my channel so you can get more drone videos to help level up your skills and become a better drone pilot. Now in this video, I did a battery flight test with these two drones, and I was actually surprised by the results. And I did my best to make this a fair test, although there is no perfect test, and I'll explain what I did. So in this test, there's 3 rounds. Now there's many factors that could affect the flight of the drone, such as how you fly the drone, the weather conditions, the humidity, and stuff like that. But I flew early in the morning, so the first 2 rounds were about 75 degrees, and then the last round was around 85 degrees. So the last round might have cut the battery life a little bit, but the first 2 rounds is probably normal flight conditions. And the wind for this test was around 3 to 5 miles per hour, so pretty normal flight conditions. So I feel like it's an accurate representation of what you're gonna see in the real world. Now the DJI Mini 3 Pro has 2 batteries. The normal battery that keeps the drone at 249 grams. That's this battery. And the second battery is slightly heavier, so it puts you over 250 grams. So I tested both batteries for each round. So if we go to DJI's website, with the normal battery, the DJI Mini 3 Pro, maximum hovering time is 30 minutes. Now the maximum flight time is 34 minutes. Okay, so 30 minutes and 34 minutes, which is pretty good time according to what they say it is. Now with the heavier battery, you get much more flight time. So hovering, you get up to 40 minutes, and then flying at a constant rate in ideal conditions, you get up to 47 minutes. Now, this is what DJI says in perfect conditions, and I flew in pretty darn good conditions. So we're gonna find out in a second how my results stacked up with what DJI said. Now for the Air 2S on DJI's website, it says it can hover for a maximum of 30 minutes and fly at a constant rate for a maximum time of up to 31 minutes. All right, so with that said, let's jump into round number 1, where I hovered both drones and I used the normal battery for the DJI Mini 3 Pro. Now I brought the drones up to about eye level and let them hover there. And keep in mind, for all these tests, I try to make it as accurate as possible. So I use the Mini 3 smart controller and my iPad, and then I use my phone, which had a stopwatch, to keep track of the time. So I pressed the stopwatch exactly when the drone took off the ground and then exactly when it landed to try to get it as accurate as possible, and all my batteries were charged up to 100%. So round number 1, the DJI Air 2S hovered for 24 minutes and 55 seconds, and the Mini 3 Pro hovered for 25 minutes and 15 seconds. And I was really surprised because I did a battery life test a long time back when the DJI Air 2S first came out, and it didn't have as much flight time when I did that test as it does now. So I think DJI did some firmware updates that definitely made the batteries better. And if you want to watch that test, which I did with the Mini 2, you can click on the link up here. And this kind of surprised me that there's only a 20-second difference between the normal battery and the Air 2S. Basically, they're pretty much the same hovering. That kind of surprised me. I thought the Mini 3 Pro would win by a lot more, by a landslide, but that's why I'm doing this test. All right, so now we're gonna go into round number 2. Now in round number 2, I used the heavier battery, and of course this heavier battery is supposed to give you a lot more flight time. So I'm expecting the Mini 3 Pro to kill the Air 2S, only has that 1 battery option. So let's go to the results. So in round number 2, the Air 2S hovered for 24 minutes and 52 seconds, and the Mini 3 Pro hovered for 33 minutes and 27 seconds. So naturally, it hovered for much longer than the Air 2S, and this is what I expected. Now I was happy with the consistency of the Air 2S batteries because I used 2 different batteries for round number 1 and round number 2, and they were only off by a couple of seconds. So that shows you that this was an accurate test, and DJI's batteries are consistent. I was a little surprised that the Mini 3 Pro didn't last longer. Okay, these heavier batteries supposed to give you way more flight time, up to 40 minutes, DJI says. It only got 33 minutes and 27 seconds, which is still great, but I would have thought it would be in the upper 30 minutes perhaps. Now we're gonna go on to round number 3. So for round number 3, I didn't fly the drones simultaneously because I thought it would be too difficult to fly them back and forth at a constant rate. So what I did is I flew one drone and then I flew the other. So I flew the Mini 3 Pro, then I threw the Air 2S, and then I threw the Mini 3 Pro again with the heavier battery. And I raised the drones up to 250 feet because I thought 250 feet is a normal altitude that most people fly. The higher up you go, the altitude and the wind and the humidity all can drain your battery. So during this third round, the wind was 5 miles per hour. It was about 85 85, 86 degrees during this test. So it was a little warmer, but there was very little humidity, okay? So because of that, I think it was a fair test. Not perfect, but I did my best to fly the drones at a constant rate, which on DJI's site, the ideal rate for the Mini 3 Pro is about 13.45 miles per hour, or about 21, 22 kilometers per hour. So that's what I did. So I flew the drone at 250 feet up in the air at a constant rate between 13 and 14 miles per hour. Now doing this test, I found it was a lot easier flying the Mini 3 Pro at a constant rate, whereas the Air 2S, it was a lot more difficult, but I did my best to keep it around that. Sometimes I was a little under, sometimes a little over, but overall I tried to keep my thumb constant so the drone wasn't like jerking. It was going at a smooth, constant rate, which is what you want to get the ideal conditions and the ideal results. So with that said, let's get to the results of round number 3. The Air 2S flew 25 minutes and 3 seconds. The Mini 3 Pro with the 249 gram battery flew 25 minutes and 47 seconds. And the Mini 3 with a much heavier battery flew 37 minutes and 9 seconds. So overall, that was expected that the Mini 3 with a heavier battery did much better. However, I was really surprised that the Air 2S battery and the normal 249 gram battery of the Mini 3 Pro give you pretty much the same flight time. Okay, you get a few more seconds with the Mini 3 Pro, maybe up to like 30 seconds more, but it's really inconsequential. Okay, so these batteries are basically the same flight time on their respective drones. Whereas if you use the bigger battery, you get much more flight time, and it's definitely worth it. I advise you to get it. But the downside is that puts you over the 249 grams, which a lot of people want to fly under the 249 grams because of certain regulations based on where you live. So it's kind of annoying that the Mini 3 Pro gets great flight time with a battery that puts it over 249 grams. If you already have the Air 2S, I would say just stick with it. But if you're just starting out, I would go with the Mini 3 Pro. I think it flies better too. That's the thing I discovered from doing this test, flying them back and forth. It just felt a lot better. It felt a lot smoother. I can't really describe it accurately, but I will say the feel just feels better in my hand, at least from my perspective flying all of DJI drones. I was so surprised at how well it's flown. Now I've flown it a little bit before this, but during this test, flying them back to back and feeling the difference, I can say that the Mini 3 Pro definitely is smoother in flight, has just a better feel and reacts to the movements and feels like more of a professional drone, which I was very surprised because I thought the Air 2S would be as good or actually better. The Air 2S is better in wind. So if you live near an ocean or something like this and you're flying in heavy wind, then yeah, the Air 2S is going to be a much better drone because the Mini 3 Pro, it's still very lightweight. So there's nothing you can do about it. That's the engineering of it. It's going to shake a little bit in heavy wind, but in normal conditions with normal wind, it's definitely my choice. So that's it for this test. Hope you enjoyed it. Now links down below to all this gear, plus a couple free videos I made to help you level up your drone skills. Like I said, you can find them below in the description. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. I'm Breck Aramella, and remember, fly like a pro.